Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Naptime Historian. Before we dive into tonight's story, please drop a comment telling us where in the world you're tuning in from and what time it is. Whether you're listening during a late night study session or an early morning commute, we love hearing about your corner of the globe. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Naptime Historian so you never miss a single deep dive into mysteries, conspiracies, and untold legends. Now, let's begin.
Hey everyone, tonight we're heading somewhere darker, a time of plagues, punishment, and pottage. We're diving into what life was actually like during the Middle Ages. Forget everything Hollywood sold you, the castles, the chivalry, the gallant knights. It's mostly fiction. The truth, you probably wouldn't survive a single day. Before we jump in, do me a favor, hit the like button and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of content. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see who's tuning in from across the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Get comfortable, because your journey begins now. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1325. The good news? You're alive. The bad news? So are the fleas. Your bed, if you can call it that, is a half-rotted straw mattress stuffed with hay and bugs. It smells like a barn floor, because 3 months ago, it was a barn floor. There's no memory foam, no pillows, and absolutely no Egyptian cotton, just a coarse wool blanket that hasn't been washed since last winter, and now weighs as much as a small cow from the accumulated grime. You blink awake as a church bell clangs in the distance. It's the medieval version of an alarm clock, only louder, and somehow even less merciful. Your home, a single-room wooden hut, no windows, no privacy, a charming open-concept design where your entire family, a few chickens, and a colony of domestic insects all share the same air. The smell, a complex bouquet of stale beer, body odor, goat, and something you hope isn't mold. But deep down you know it is. You try to stretch, but instantly regret it. The air is freezing, your joints ache, and you're 22 years old, which in medieval terms is basically middle-aged. Your spine creaks like an old door, and your knees sound like a bag of gravel being shaken by a confused peasant. You take a breath, stand up, and gamble, because the dirt floor beneath you is either wet from last night's rain, which leaked through the thatched roof, or crusty from something your neighbor's chicken did. Either way, your bare feet are now one with the local ecosystem. Oh, and privacy. What's that? Your entire family, including that cousin who just never left, is waking up right next to you. There are no bedrooms, no curtains, no me time. Just communal everything. Welcome to morning in medieval Europe, where you are never truly alone, because 8 other people, a goat and several thousand parasites are always with you. And this is just the start of your day. So you've survived the night. Barely. And now nature calls. But it's not calling politely. It's screaming, and here's where you start missing modern plumbing. Badly. There's no toilet, no seat, no toilet paper, no flush. Not even a mildly resentful plunger lurking in the corner. If you're a peasant, and odds are, you are, your bathroom is probably a wooden bucket out behind the house. It's already full, because Uncle Wolfstan had a rough night after eating questionable turnips. The smell, think apocalypse, but warmer. You hold your breath, do your business, and then, the moment of truth, you throw it into the street. Yes, the street, and you're supposed to shout Gardez-vous first. That's old French for watch out below. But let's be honest, no one ever moves fast enough. The streets of your medieval town, their open sewers, a festive mix of human waste, animal droppings, and mystery liquids that even God has stopped identifying. If you're lucky enough to live in a town with public latrines, congratulations. You get to sit shoulder to shoulder with strangers in a room with no privacy and zero ventilation. Maybe you'll make small talk, maybe you won't. Either way, try not to breathe too deeply. Toilet paper? Never heard of it. You wipe with straw, leaves, moss, maybe a rag. If you're feeling really fancy, a scrap of wool, sometimes nothing at all. Which, by the way, is probably why handshakes didn't catch on until much later. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but surely castle life is better, right? Well, sort of. If you live in a castle, you might have access to a garderobe. That's a fancy term for a stone bench, with a hole that drops your waist directly into the moat, which sounds fine, until you realize that your enemies know this. Yes, attackers have literally climbed into castles through the toilet chute. Nothing says surprise attack like an uninvited guest emerging from your medieval outhouse. So whether you're a humble farmer or a highborn lord, using the bathroom in the Middle Ages is always a humiliating experience. It's cold, it's public, it's dangerous, and it's never clean. One slip on a wet stone path, and you're face first in humanity's leftovers. And just in case you thought you could rinse that trauma away, sorry, you still haven't brushed your teeth. But don't worry, we'll get to that next. So, you've made it through the toilet gauntlet. Congratulations. You deserve a reward, right? Maybe a nice breakfast? Something warm, delicious, comforting? Sorry, this is medieval Europe. Comfort isn't really on the menu. Breakfast, if you can even call it that, is more of an obligation than a meal. There are no eggs, Benedict, no orange juice, and definitely no avocado toast. You squat near a smoky fire, cradling a wooden bowl of something that looks and smells like it was scraped off the underside of a mule. Welcome to your daily dose of pottage. Pottage is a thick, gloopy stew made of whatever you can scrounge together. Grains, root vegetables, a few beans if you're lucky. It's been simmering in the same pot for days, sometimes weeks. New ingredients are just dumped on top of the old. It's less of a recipe and more of a food-themed experiment in survival. On the side, you've got a chunk of bread, not the kind you gently slice. This loaf could survive a siege. Made from coarse barley or rye flour, often bulked up with sawdust, ground up acorns, or other creative fillers, because wheat is for the rich. You don't cut it, you negotiate with it, and to wash it all down, you're drinking beer. Yes, beer. At 6 a.m. Not because you're celebrating, because the water will kill you faster than a charging warhorse. It's full of parasites, waste, and things best left unexamined. So instead, you drink small beer, a weak, low-alcohol ale brewed by boiling water, which at least makes it slightly safer. Even children drink it. Nobody's thrilled about it, but at least it doesn't come with a death certificate. Want meat or cheese? Keep dreaming. That's for Sundays, saint feast days, and only if your local lord is feeling generous. Most peasants go months without tasting meat. As for fresh fruit, only when it's in season, and not already fermenting into wine. And don't even think about spices. A pinch of pepper could cost more than your monthly wages. Salt is so valuable, it's locked away like treasure. So you chew your gritty bread. You sip your medieval beer. You try not to think about the rat that may or may not have helped stir your pottage in the night. Breakfast doesn't nourish you, it just happens to you. And now that you're underfed, under-rested, and still itching from last night's flea party, it's time to get dressed and prepare for a full day of physical labor, medieval style. So you've eaten your lukewarm sludge, choked down a beer for breakfast, and you're still alive. Barely. Time to get dressed. Not that it'll help. Your wardrobe? One outfit. That's it. Just one. If you're lucky, it's a rough wool tunic, or a coarse linen shift that you've been wearing every day for the past several months, possibly years. Fashion isn't seasonal. It's survival. You wear it until it disintegrates or gives you a fungal infection. Underwear? Optional. If you're especially fortunate, you might own a linen undertunic, but most peasants are going commando under layers of itchy, sweaty wool, lovingly stitched together by someone who had only a vague idea of what clothing was supposed to do. And don't even think about washing your clothes. There's no laundry room, no detergent, no cheerful dryer buzz. If your clothes ever get washed, it's a major production. Haul water from the well or river, heat it over a fire, scrub your tunic with ashes or lye, and hang it to dry in the sun, which shows up about 3 days a year. So for the most part, your clothes are stiff, stained, and smell like they've been marinated in compost. Shoes? Ha! If you even own a pair, they're made of untreated leather, thin as paper, and about as waterproof as hope. They offer the same arch support as a wet leaf. Most peasants go barefoot, through mud, dung, cold and something you strongly suspect was once alive. Which brings us to your skin. It's not doing well. Fleas, lice, and bedbugs are a fact of life. Everyone has them. Peasants, nobles, monks, even children. You itch constantly. Your scalp is a battlefield. Your armpits are raw. And if you have a rash, too bad. There's no dermatologist, no ointments, no creams. You just suffer, quietly, and hope it doesn't get worse. You scratch with whatever's nearby. A stick, a spoon, your dignity. And now that you're dressed in damp wool, teeming with parasites, it's time to greet the day, but not with a smile. Because in the Middle Ages, smiling is risky, not emotionally, but dentally. Let's talk about your teeth next. Now that you're fully dressed, in layers of scratchy wool, crawling with bugs, it's time to flash that charming morning smile. Except, you don't, because in the Middle Ages, smiling is more of a threat than a greeting. Let's talk about your teeth. There's no toothbrush, no toothpaste, no floss, no mouthwash, not even a vague idea that cleaning your teeth is a thing you should do. Some folks chew on a stick, others might rinse with wine, vinegar, or plain water. But for the most part, your teeth are flying solo, and they're not doing great. By your mid-20s, your mouth looks like something recovered from a haunted crypt. Cavities are common, gums are swollen, enamel is long gone, and that strange brownish tint, not a coffee stain, that's decay. And here's the kicker. If you're a noble, you might actually have worse teeth than the peasants. Why? Sugar, imported at great cost. Sugar is becoming trendy among the elite, mostly used in small cakes and sweets. So while the peasants rot slowly on acorns and bark bread, the rich rot in luxury, toothaches, you live with them. They throb in the background like medieval elevator music, constant, dull, and deeply unpleasant. And when the pain gets too much, you pull the tooth out yourself. Or worse, you go to the barber surgeon. Yes, that's right. The guy who cuts your hair is also your dentist. He'll yank out your molars with an iron hook and zero anesthesia. Your only options for pain relief are alcohol, prayer, or passing out. And if the tooth gets infected, too bad. There are no antibiotics. A simple infection can turn into sepsis, which means you can actually die from a toothache. Let that sink in. Something we solve today with a quick visit to the pharmacy could end your life in 1325. And don't even think about kissing. Halitosis, chronic bad breath, is everywhere. The air is thick with the stench of rot, decay, and whatever that guy had for dinner last week. Romance doesn't start with a smile. It starts with a land deed. In the medieval world, your mouth is a battlefield, and it's losing the war. But you can't dwell on it, because now, with your teeth throbbing, and your stomach already growling again, it's time to get to work. And in the Middle Ages, work doesn't mean a laptop and coffee break. It means sweat, pain, and survival. So your back aches, your stomach's empty, and your gums are on fire. Time to head to work. Except there's no office, no coffee machine, no ergonomic chair. Your job isn't about purpose or fulfillment. It's about survival. And for 90% of people in the Middle Ages, that job is simple. Don't die while laboring for someone else's comfort. You're a peasant. Congratulations. That means you don't own the land you work. It belongs to your local lord, a man who probably doesn't know your name, but definitely knows how much wheat you owe him. Your day starts at sunrise and ends when the sun vanishes behind the trees. There's no weekend, no lunch break, no mental health day. Just work. 6 days a week. Sunday is your only day off. If you're not harvesting, fighting off raiders, or praying your infected toe stops turning black. Your tools? A wooden hoe, a rusty sickle, and whatever's left of your body. You dig ditches, plow fields, sow seeds, haul water, and pull weeds until your spine begins to resemble the letter S. And if you're a woman, surprise, you do all of that, and then some. You tend children, cook, clean, spin wool, feed animals, and try to ignore the fact that your husband's lice are slowly migrating to your side of the bed. You're a multitasking machine, with no time to rest and no one asking how you feel. Children start working by age 5. There's no school, no playground, just a small wooden rake, and a dream of someday not dying of dysentery. And if you're not a farmer, maybe you're a blacksmith, a tanner, a cooper. Great. That means you spend your days breathing in smoke, working with animal guts, or soaking hides in urine. Your pay, survival. Your perks, occasional bleeding, break a bone, too bad, get a fever, drink warm beer and keep going. You can't afford to stop, because if you don't work, you don't eat. And if you don't eat, there's always someone waiting to replace you. So you grip your shovel, you ignore the blisters, you keep digging, because in the Middle Ages, your job isn't a career, it's a slow-motion endurance test. So your back is on fire, your hands are blistered, your stomach's still gnawing at itself. And now the sky decides to get involved, because in the Middle Ages, the weather isn't just background noise, it's personal. Let's start with winter. Your home has no insulation, no heating, no double-glazed windows, just wooden walls with gaps wide enough to throw a chicken through. Your window, if it exists, is covered in cloth. Glass is for cathedrals and castles. The fire in the hearth is mostly symbolic, because firewood is expensive, and gathering it from the forest, that could get you executed. Yes, there are laws against picking up the wrong stick in the wrong place. So you bundle up in your one damp wool tunic. You huddle near the dying embers. You sleep with your nose frozen and your feet permanently numb. Your fingers so stiff they feel like tiny medieval popsicles. There's no diagnosis for frostbite. It's just called bad luck. But maybe you're thinking, summer must be better. Right, wrong. In summer, your home turns into a clay oven. There's no fan, no breeze, no deodorant. You sweat through your layers, but you can't take them off. Showing too much skin isn't just scandalous, it's dangerous. Sunburn, insect bites, and social judgment all arrive before noon. Flies swarm your face, mosquitoes buzz in your ears. You try to sleep through the heat, but your neighbors are arguing, the dog's barking, and a baby is screaming somewhere outside. Inside, the air smells like fermented goat stew and desperation. Out in the fields, the sun bakes you alive. There's no hat, unless you've fashioned one out of straw like a desperate scarecrow. There's no sunscreen either. Heat stroke. They don't even have a name for it. They just say you took a bad turn and dump water on your head. So whether it's winter or summer, you're miserable. Your clothes still itch. Your food is still terrible. Your work still breaks you. The only thing that never changes, no matter the season, the weather hates you. And it's not alone, because next we're talking about water. Yes, water. The thing that's supposed to keep you alive, but might just kill you instead. So, you're sweating through itchy wool in the summer, or shivering in your own breath during the winter. Either way, your body begs for one simple thing. Water. You need a drink. You want to wash your face. Maybe rinse off the smell of wet goat stew and existential despair. Too bad. In the Middle Ages, water isn't your friend. It's trying to murder you. Quietly, and without warning. Let's start with drinking. There's a stream nearby. It looks fresh, bubbling, maybe even picturesque, but looks are deceiving. Upstream, someone just dumped a chamber pot into it. Or worse, a dead animal. Maybe both. That clear-looking water is full of parasites, bacteria, and the entire microbial horror show of medieval Europe. One sip can earn you a stomachache, diarrhea, fever, or a front-row seat to your own funeral. That's why most people drink beer. Weak, cloudy, low-alcohol ale, brewed by boiling water. It's not refreshing, but it's less deadly. Even kids drink it, not because it's fun, because it's safer than water. If you're rich, you might sip wine. If you're poor, you pray for beer. And if you must drink water, you accept the risk and hope it doesn't end in hallucinations and convulsions. But what about washing? Surely people bathed occasionally. In theory, yes. In practice, absolutely not. See, back then, people believed that bathing was dangerous. Seriously. The medical consensus was that hot water opened the pores, making you vulnerable to disease. So if you stayed covered in grime, you were safer. The filth was protective. Communal bathhouses did exist, but they weren't just for cleaning. They doubled as social clubs, gossip centers, and occasionally brothels. Naturally, the church disapproved, and many bathhouses were shut down. Even if you wanted to bathe, it was a full-on production. You'd have to fetch water from a well, heat it over a fire, pour it into a leaking wooden tub, and pray no one else used it before or after you. Rainwater, collected in open barrels, where birds poop, insects breed, and moss thrives. Sounds refreshing, doesn't it? So whether it's going into your mouth, touching your body or soaking into your floor. Water in the Middle Ages is less of a life source and more of a gamble. One wrong sip, and you're spending your final hours curled up on a straw mattress, sweating out your regrets. Next time you pour a glass of clean water from a faucet, maybe raise it in honor of your ancestors. They didn't have hydration, they had hope. And if you're unlucky enough to get sick, well, next comes the medieval version of healthcare. Spoiler, it's just polite torture with a theology degree. So you drank the wrong water, or stepped on a nail, or got a fever, or maybe your neighbor sneezed in your general direction. Whatever the case, you're sick now. And in the Middle Ages, getting sick isn't just unfortunate, it's potentially fatal. You need help. You need a doctor. Too bad, because medicine in the 14th century isn't about healing, it's about balancing your humors. Yes, humors. According to medieval science, your body is ruled by 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Feeling sick, that just means your soup is out of balance. Got a fever? You've got too much blood. The solution? Bleed you. They'll drain your life force into a bowl using a dull blade, or if you're lucky, some well-fed leeches. And guess who's doing it? The barber. Yep. The same guy who cuts your hair is also your surgeon. It's a 2-for-1 special trim and trauma. Feeling sad or anxious, that's clearly an excess of black bile. You might be prescribed a laxative, a warm herbal purge, or just prayers while your friends start planning your funeral. Quietly. Break a bone? You're in real trouble. There's no anesthesia, unless you count screaming until you pass out. Surgery is performed with knives that haven't been cleaned since the Crusades. The tools are heated over fire, not to sterilize them, but to look more dramatic. Antibiotics, not invented. Germ theory, never heard of it. Most healers think disease comes from bad air, or divine punishment for your sins. Got a stomachache? Must be your sinful thoughts. Better confess while vomiting. If your condition worsens, the treatments escalate: more leeches, crushed beetles, mysterious poultices made from herbs, wine, and sometimes, yes, animal dung. And always a priest nearby, just in case the cure finishes what the illness started. If you recover, it's a miracle. If you die, it's your fault. Maybe you didn't pray hard enough. Maybe you made eye contact with a heretic. Who knows? And if the doctor happens to be wrong, don't worry. They'll blame your bad humors, bad morals, or bad karma. So yes, in the Middle Ages, going to the doctor is like spinning a very sharp, very infected roulette wheel. If you're sick, your best hope isn't medicine, it's survival. But let's say you make it through. You're weak, exhausted, and starving. Time to eat again. Hope you're hungry. For rot. You survived your illness. Barely. You've been bled, leeched, prayed over, possibly purged, and somehow you're still breathing. Now your stomach's growling again. It's dinner time. You shuffle back to your hut, craving something. Anything. Warm, safe, and filling. Bad news. Your meal is trying to kill you. Let's start with the basics. Food preservation doesn't really exist. There's no fridge, no freezer, no knowledge of bacteria. Your options are salt, smoke, or just crossing your fingers and hoping the cold weather keeps things from rotting. If you have meat, which is rare, it's been hanging for days, covered in flies, and lightly marinated in desperation. The smell? Somewhere between swamp and regret. And odds are, a rat has already had a few bites. Bread? That's the staple. But even that's a gamble. In good harvest years, it's made with coarse rye or barley flour, dense, hard and sharp enough to be used as a weapon. In bad years, desperate bakers stretch their supplies with bark, clay, or powdered roots. Yes, actual clay bread. You eat it, but your stomach holds a grudge. And if it's rye season, get ready for a bonus. Ergot. It's a fungus that infects the grain, causes seizures, hallucinations, gangrene, and occasionally, mass hysteria. It's like eating LSD, laced with tetanus. Vegetables. Turnips. So many turnips. Boiled turnips. Roasted turnips. Turnips floating in your eternal pottage. If you hate turnips too bad, that's dinner. Again, fruit exists, but only in season, and it rots quickly. Sugar, reserved for the wealthy. A single pinch of cinnamon could cost more than your entire year's rent. Dairy, risky. Fresh milk spoils within hours. Butter and cheese survive a little longer, but they're loaded with bacteria. You eat them anyway, because frankly, it's that or gnaw on your boots. And spices, forget it. Salt is so valuable, it's sometimes stored under lock and key. For most peasants, flavor comes from onions, bitterness, and a vivid imagination. Oh, and let's talk legality. Think you'll sneak into the woods and catch a rabbit for a real meal? You better hope no one sees you, because game animals belong to the Lord. Poaching could get you fined, imprisoned, or executed. That's right. In the Middle Ages, dinner could literally be a death sentence. So you sit down, if you're lucky enough to have a bench, and eat your grey stew. You chew your dense bread, you sip your beer, and you try not to think about the bug you just swallowed. This isn't comfort food, this is combat food. Every bite is a test, because in the Middle Ages, food doesn't heal you, it haunts you. And once you've scraped the bottom of the bowl, don't get too comfortable. The church is watching. You've made it through another meal without dying, or getting arrested for chewing something you didn't technically own. You'd think the day is winding down. Time to rest, right? Not so fast. Because this isn't just the Middle Ages. This is God's Middle Ages. And He and the church are always watching. Religion isn't just part of your life, it is your life. The church controls everything. Your calendar, your education, if you're literate, your laws, your marriage, your death, and every moment in between. Think of it as your spiritual landlord, and you're always behind on rent. The church bell rings 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night, not to help you tell time, but to remind you to pray. Miss a prayer? Sin. Eat meat on a Friday? Sin. Think about your neighbor's wife in a dream? Double sin. Hell isn't a metaphor here. It's a real, vividly described horror show. Rivers of fire, boiling blood, demons with pitchforks, and eternal wailing. The priest tells you about it often, in graphic detail. And don't bother reading the Bible to check for yourself. It's written in Latin, a language you don't speak, and are never allowed to learn. Only the clergy get access. You rely entirely on the church to interpret everything for you. And guess what? They interpret it in their favor. Tithes. Mandatory. You owe the church 10% of everything. Got chickens? They want eggs. Got wheat? Hand it over. Got nothing. You're spiritually and financially bankrupt. Even holidays, which should be a break, are really holy days. That means more fasting, more church services, and more guilt. No dancing, no fun, just repentance. Because God sees everything, and joy is suspicious. Question the church. That's heresy, and heretics are burned. Witches are drowned, blasphemers are flogged, skeptics are quickly corrected, publicly and painfully. So you bow, you kneel, you confess, you fast, you keep your head down, because in the Middle Ages, the path to heaven is paved with fear. And if you're a woman, oh, it gets worse, because in this world, you're not just living in sin, you are sin. So far you've endured cold, hunger, parasites, and the looming threat of eternal damnation. Now imagine doing all that as a woman, because in the Middle Ages being female is like playing life on hard mode. No health potions, no second chances, and no restart button. From the moment you're born, your life path is mostly predetermined. You're expected to marry young, bear children, serve your husband, and die tired. That's not cynicism, that's the curriculum. Education? Unlikely, unless you're born into nobility and sent to a convent. Your intellectual development ends the moment you can sew a button and churn butter. Marriage happens early, really early. It's not weird to be betrothed at 12 and pregnant by 14. Love has nothing to do with it. Marriage is a business deal. Land, livestock, and alliances. Your opinion is not part of the transaction. Once married, you're essentially property. Your job is to produce heirs, feed everyone, clean the home, help in the fields, and crucially, not complain. If you do, you're a nag, or worse, a witch. And that label, it comes with complimentary torture and possible execution. Childbirth, it's a lottery. There's no prenatal care, no sterile tools, no pain relief, just a midwife, a prayer, and a lot of bleeding. If there are complications, and there often are, you and the baby may not make it. Some women survive 10 pregnancies, many don't survive 2, and if you do survive, congratulations. Now you're raising a screaming infant in a flea-infested hut, while still expected to cook, clean, haul water, and act like it's fine. If you're widowed, you're vulnerable. If you're unmarried, you're suspicious. If you're outspoken, you're dangerous. Women with herbal knowledge, strong personalities, or even unusual looks were often accused of witchcraft. All it took was a bad harvest and a neighbor who didn't like you, and suddenly, you're on trial for consorting with the devil. Even in the church, your role is limited. If you become a nun, you take a vow of silence, follow strict rules, and live your life ranked spiritually below men forever. In short, being a woman in the Middle Ages means enduring, obeying, reproducing, and suffering in silence, ideally while smiling. Because even in a world where everyone is miserable, women are expected to suffer gracefully. But just when you think life couldn't possibly get harder, here comes the violence. You've worked yourself to the bone, obeyed every church rule, and tried not to draw attention. But there's still one more thing lurking around every corner of medieval life. Violence, loud, bloody, and completely normal. The Middle Ages aren't peaceful. Law and order, that mostly means hoping the local lord isn't in a bad mood. Justice isn't about protection, it's about performance. Let's start small. Steal a loaf of bread, you could lose a hand. Gossip too much, you might end up wearing the scold's bridle, a metal mask with a bar that presses down on your tongue, meant to keep you quiet. Publicly, painfully, accused of lying, that could earn you a pierced tongue, or worse. And if you're suspected of something serious, heresy, theft, witchcraft, you won't be asked to prove your innocence. You'll be tortured into confessing. Welcome to trial by ordeal. In one version, you stick your hand in boiling water to retrieve a stone. If it heals cleanly in 3 days, you're innocent. If not, guilty. Another version, you're thrown into a river. If you float, you're guilty and will be punished. If you sink, well, you're innocent and also probably dead. It's like a game show where the prize is survival and the rules make no sense. Executions are public events. Hangings, beheadings, burnings. People gather to watch. Some bring snacks. It's the closest thing to medieval television. And violence isn't just dished out by the authorities, it's everywhere. Street fights, drunken brawls, domestic abuse, all common and mostly ignored. Husbands were legally allowed to discipline their wives. Children were beaten as routine. Strangers could be stabbed over spilled ale, walk past the wrong person, look at a noble the wrong way, step on the wrong patch of road. Any of it could end in blood. And then there's war. Someone is always marching off to stab someone in the name of land, honor, God, or boredom. Local feuds, clan rivalries, crusades, you name it. The world is constantly at war with itself, and regular people are caught in the middle. Violence isn't a breakdown of society in the Middle Ages. It is society. Everyone lives with the knowledge that justice is arbitrary, peace is temporary, and your neighbor might bash your head in over a pig. But let's say you make it through all of that. Somehow, you've dodged death, disease, and execution. That brings us to the final chapter of medieval life, your early, unglamorous death. You've survived the filth, the hunger, the fevers, the torture-based healthcare, the punishable gossip, and maybe even childbirth. But don't celebrate just yet, because in the Middle Ages, death doesn't wait for old age. It shows up early, and often. If you're over 40, you're a statistical miracle. They might even call you the old one, which sounds sweet until you realize that most of your childhood friends are buried under unmarked mounds somewhere outside the village. The average life expectancy hovers around 30 to 40 years, but that number is dragged down hard by one grim fact. Nearly half of all children die before age 5. Disease, malnutrition, poor sanitation, bad luck. Any one of these could end a life before it really begins. No vaccines, no antibiotics, no prenatal care. One bad winter, and your entire village could lose its youngest generation. If you survive childhood, you step directly into adult exhaustion. You begin work as soon as you can walk, and by 25, your joints creak, your teeth are mostly gone, and you've probably buried at least one child. For women, childbirth is one of the leading causes of death. There's no surgical intervention, no anesthesia, just heat, prayer, and whatever the midwife can manage with her bare hands and limited experience. If the babies breach, or the labor stalls, or there's a tear, your odds plummet. For men, it's a different kind of roulette. Farming accidents, infected wounds, a bar fight gone wrong, or a crusade you didn't volunteer for. Even walking to market is risky. There could be thieves on the road, a jealous rival in town, or some knight galloping by who thinks your face is in the way. Then there's the real wild cards: plague, famine, and poison bread. One day you're eating your acorn-thick porridge, the next, you're convulsing in a corner, because the rye was laced with ergot. Funerals are quick, often rushed. You're buried fast, to prevent the spread of disease. No embalming, no casket, just a hole in the dirt, a few murmured prayers, and hopefully enough space left in the churchyard. You don't retire in the Middle Ages, you just stop showing up. And now, after everything, after lice, leeches, hunger, heresy trials, and back-breaking labor, you reach the end. So how was your day? You woke up in filth, relieved yourself into a bucket, brushed your teeth with wishful thinking, ate soup that may have eaten you back, worked until your spine screamed, scratched your way through the parasite Olympics, dodged a public execution, and still managed to sin in ways you didn't even know were possible. Welcome to a single day in medieval Europe. Still dreaming of becoming a knight? Think again, because that romanticized version, the chivalry, the honor, the noble ladies in towers, the heroic battles and candlelit feasts, that's not history, that's fantasy. The truth was far grimmer. But even in this grim world, something surprising still happened. People lived, people laughed, people found meaning. Let's talk about that next. So, after lice, loss, sickness, and suffering, what's left? What's left is surprising. Life. Real life. Because despite everything, the filth, the fear, the brutality, people still lived. Not just biologically, but emotionally. They laughed. They sang. They told stories around fires. They carved meaning out of chaos. They held hands during plagues, shared bread when harvests failed, risked their lives to protect strangers, family, faith. Peasants danced during feast days. Children played with sticks and scraps and songs. Lovers whispered in the shadows of crumbling walls. Even in a world of relentless pain, beauty found cracks to grow in. There were festivals, colorful, rowdy, sacred. There were ballads and poetry, myths and legends, jokes about the bishop's nose and the neighbor's goat. People made art, even if it was scratched into wood or sewn into sleeves. They loved their children, cared for their animals, buried their dead with respect, hung herbs from the rafters, and painted tiny flowers on bowls no one else would ever see. They found faith, not always the church's version, but something deeper, a belief that maybe this pain meant something, that maybe death wasn't the end, that maybe, just maybe, joy could exist, even here. And that's the part history books often forget. Not the wars, not the plagues, not the kings, but the quiet resilience of ordinary people who against all odds kept going. Yes, the Middle Ages were brutal, but they were also human, raw, honest, full of flaws and tenderness in equal measure. So when you turn on your faucet, brush your teeth, close a window, or just sit in a warm room with clean clothes, remember them. Your ancestors. They walked through fire so you could walk on pavement. They didn't write history books. They lived them, one hard, miraculous day at a time.